Nice to see you here today. We are going to talk about how to name your yoga business. For me, it's like one of the first things I want to do with a business. I think that creating the name for your business is like such a creative project and is so exciting. Um, but it does, what I want to talk about today is that it does take a little bit of like reflection on like who you are as a person, who you are as a teacher, starting to think about who your students are, and also some strategic planning. So that's what we're going to talk about. Because for most of us, when we name our yoga business, it feels really personal. We make it like a really personal project, but it has to be able to transcend that personal and be relatable to your potential students and be memorable for your potential students. So something that they have a connection to, not just you. And so that's why it's good to take some time to ask a couple of questions, do a little bit of brainstorming, and maybe even reach out for some public collaboration as you start to move towards naming your business. So before you land on a name, start designing your logo. Um, let's talk about a couple of key things that you can ask yourself, a couple of key areas to think about when you're naming your business that hopefully will guide you through that creative process. So the first thing is to reflect on your core values and your vision. So thinking about a name that aligns with who you are, with why you practice yoga, with why you want to teach yoga, like what are your core values and what are the business's core values or the unique vision that you have, um, that feels really authentic for you and hopefully will resonate with your students. So some questions to ask yourself are like, what values or qualities do you want your teaching practice or your business to represent? And how does like your vision for the future of your business influence the type of name that you want? And one of the things I mean by that, that's kind of a big question, but like, are you planning to be a local business located in a suburb, or are you wanting to be a business that's online that reaches, out to your country or more globally? So those kinds of questions are going to be really helpful in kind of identifying what type of name you want to give to your business. One of the exercises that you can do for this is your who, what, why exercise in your yoga business basics study. Who are you? Who are your students? What are you teaching? What are your students coming to class for? And why are you teaching? Why are your students practicing yoga? So core values and visions, kind of the first area to explore. The second is to really start to think about your audience. Who are your students? What is your target demographic? And you want to consider names that can appeal directly to that audience, whether that's a specific age group, whether that's level of experience, like beginners or experienced practitioners, um, whether it's gym goers or people who are more wellness oriented, people who are more on the outdoorsy spectrum of movers. So really starting to think about that. So asking yourself questions: who do you want to attract to your yoga classes? Who's your demographic? And then thinking about what kind of language, what kind of style is going to resonate with that group. So is it going to be something quippy and funny? Is it going to be something really sincere? Is it going to be something really business-like if you want to be teaching corporate yoga? So really thinking about who's your demographic. So I've mentioned like considering whether you want your name to have appeal to like just your local community or like more universal appeal. And that's something to really take some time to think about. If you want your name to like really reflect your local community, like your suburb or your town or your city, or you'd like a name that's got broader appeal, especially if you're someone who's not going to be staying put. If you know that you're going to be moving somewhere, you're going to spend a couple of years traveling, you might want to think about not anchoring your business name in your local suburb. So that's something to really spend some time thinking about. To think about is like keeping it simple. We have a lot of really fancy Sanskrit words in yoga that we become very attracted to, but those can be really hard for people to remember, really hard for them to spell. So you might think about keeping like shorter, clear names that are easier for people to remember, easier for people to share. Um, and so that's going to include some of the more complex Sanskrit words, unless you're teaching to a really experienced audience who's going to be familiar with those words, and therefore it's going to be attractive to them. If you're looking more at the general public, you might want to steer clear of that. You also want to be really careful about combining words that can cause confusion. So these are some that I've seen that I think cause a little bit of confusion. If like your name's Anna and you teach yoga, if you call your business Yoga Anna, is it YOGA or YOGANNA? Like it can get really confusing. Is it two A's there, or like the energy yogi? Is it THEENER? Like that can be actually an obstacle to your students being able to look you up on for your website, your social media. So you do want to take care that things are clear and easy to spell, easy to read. Be surprised at something that can make complete and total sense to you that can be utterly confusing for your students. I think it's worth knowing that Googling, especially in the last 12 months, Googling's gotten a lot harder. And for people being able to find you, local yoga teacher, or you, yoga studio, or you, online teacher, or, retreat provider, or whatever, that's gotten harder. And your name is one of the components that can make finding you and the specific thing that you do a lot easier. Keep in mind that there's a lot of yoga businesses out there. So before you get really falling in love with your business name, you need to check the availability of that name. So research that that name isn't already in use. That's going to help you avoid legal issues down the track. Ensure that your brand stands out and is unique, um, and that you can register that business name, right?
Yeah.
And the domain, the web domain, the social media. Um, there are some yoga names that are quite overused. And so it's worth it to do a little bit of research and find out what names are already in use in your community, what big brand names are out there to steer clear from, and how you can differentiate your business. Canberra years ago, there was a studio called Soul Yoga, and another studio opened up. Canberra's not a big city; it's 400,000 people. Another studio opened up and called itself Soul Yoga, and it was there's like less than 10 yoga studios in the city at this point, and two of them have the same name. It doesn't make sense. It caused a lot of confusion, and it also caused some conflict within the yoga community. One of them did not last. So have you checked if your business name is available to register with your state or your federal business registration? In Australia, you can check with register.business.gov.au, and that's where you can check all the elements of naming your business. You also want to check if your business name is available as a domain. So www.myogabusiness.com or .com.au. And if it's available as social media handles in some form. Social media handles you can be a little bit more flexible with. You can put dots between the words or hyphens, but you want to try to choose a name where you're going to be able to have a fairly clear, like, my dash yoga dash business social media handle. In your website, it's much preferred not to have hyphens. So if all you can get is a my-yogabusiness.net, I'd be looking for another business name, because that's going to be harder for people to find. And it's less, for people who are more tech savvy, it's less respected, would be the
Yeah.
word. This is a project of brainstorming. Brainstorm, collaborate with other people. Importantly, take your time. Don't rush the process. Like sometimes you'll land on a name that feels like magic for you, but other people can't relate to. Like, take some time with that. Sometimes you're kind of, oh, I don't know if I connect with this name, but then it grows on you over time. Whereas others, like, you take some time away and you go, you know what? After thinking about it for a while, that doesn't fit with me. Um, so it's important that you sort of give yourself time and space and not rush the process, and try not to get bogged down if you have trouble deciding. If you brainstorm and you've got 5 options which all seem amazing, like, that's okay. Set your names aside for a spell and return, or put your ideas out to family or friends, or like the best thing to do is to put it out to people who are in your target demographic, people who you would expect to see or want to see coming to your classes, and see what they have to say, get their feedback. One studio in Canberra, she came up with a bunch of names and then she just emailed them out and like said vote. She sent them out to a bunch of people, vote on the name, whatever got the highest number, that was the name for her business, and off she went. Yeah. Um, I I would struggle with that a little bit myself, because it is such a personal experience naming a business, but she was able to kind of separate that a little bit and go like, this business name isn't just for me, it's for my students. And so whatever name my students are most connected to, that's what I'm going to name my business. And so I thought that was a really good idea. So a couple of things in that brainstorming vein to think about, like, when you've got a name that you're thinking about, take a couple of steps. Say the name out loud. Imagine it on a website, www.yourbusinessname.com. What does it look like? Imagine it on a logo, right? Start to think about how you're going to build your business around that name. Obviously share it with trusted friends, potential students, gather some feedback. One way you can do that is like, do a contest with potential students, friends, neighbors, friends of neighbors. Maybe they can win a free class or something in trade for being part of the naming process, right? So make it fun, make it a collaborative experience, and invite the community to really partake in the experience of naming something new. That what's great about that is they'll feel an investment in your business. They'll feel like they contributed to the creation of this new thing. And that's really, it's a lovely feel. Like, right? If you think about where you're going to draw your ideas from, your name is definitely a top place where you might draw ideas from. And, back, when I started teaching yoga teacher training, which is almost 20 years ago now, you could get the domain for Yoga with Alice. You probably can't get that domain anymore. You probably can't get those social media handles. You probably have to be a little bit, if those are important to you in your local business, you probably have to get a little bit more creative with that. But if you're planning on having a small local business that doesn't depend on a business social media page and on a website, Yoga with Alice is perfectly fine, and people will remember that, right? You can also, you know, add things to that. Like, what's your yoga style or niche? Gentle yoga with Alice, dynamic yoga with Alice, flow yoga with Alice. So
Yeah.
thinking about what it is you're offering, whether that be a style or a particular niche, all bodies, inclusive, trauma sensitive, frontline, family yoga, yoga for men, yoga for menopause, right? Whatever your style or niche is, that can also play into your name. Yoga with old Alice, and Wonderland yoga. Like, there's totally, Mad Hatter's yoga. There's all kinds of ways that you could play around with your name and make it just that little bit more than Yoga with Alice. Um, you can also, think about something really specific to your business, like, where you teach or when you teach, right? If your business is going to be exclusively after work classes, sunset yoga, right? Or exclusively you're teaching in the morning, sunrise yoga. Like you can really start to drill down and get kind of specific. You can use your location, so your city, town, or suburb, or something about your local landscape, right? Like, do you live in the mountains? Do you live at the beach? Is there a pine forest nearby, right?
Mm.
So you can look to like something that inspires you from your area. Um, you could use the nickname for your area, Southside Yoga, Bush Capital Yoga, that's Canberra. What's the nickname for Sydney? Emerald City Yoga, right? Or whatever the nickname is for your area, that could play into your name. It's of how you want people to feel or how you want people to experience yoga. Relaxed, strong, restored, mindful, growing, aligned,
Yeah.
connected, at ease, right? So you can be bringing in those elements of like, how do you want people to feel? Or like, I want to tell people what this experience is going to be like, right? It's not just yoga, it's yoga with like this vibe, this feeling, this focus, right? So that's something that you can bring into your name. You could bring into your name any concept or a yoga pose from what you're learning. you know we've got frogs, we've got fish, we've got trees, 8 limbs, dog, down dog, half moon, ahimsa, right? Non-harming, metta, loving kindness, maitri, friendliness. Like those are all concepts and words that you can be bringing into your name, right? As
Mm.
long as it will be relatable for your students. There's just a couple of things I think that in our enthusiasm, we want to take care with. You want to take care that you're not appropriating from another culture or tradition, that using images of deities would be considered disrespectful depending on how you use it in your marketing materials and things. That's something to be aware of. Um, Again, you want to be really careful you're not using a name that's already in use in your area or is already a really recognized brand. I wouldn't be naming my business Gaiam Yoga because that's a huge brand in yoga world, right? So you want to make sure that it's something that you're not um, like Toys R Us, right? Don't name your business Yoga R Us. There's all kinds of businesses out there, and some of them are like one person businesses, like Painters R Us, and they get sued because you can't do that. Because Toys R Us is such a well known brand that if you use the R Us, that's infringing on their copyright. So you want to be careful that you're not using something that's like going to get you into legal trouble down the road, right? Um, Again, you want to make sure that depending on the size of your business, you want to be able to secure the domain and social media handles for your name as best you can. Even if you're not going to use them now, buy the domain. It'll cost you 5 to 20 bucks a year to park it and just own it. It'll cost you nothing for the social media handles so that down the track, if you want to build a website, that's available to you. Okay. And you want to be sure that your new name has room to grow if that's your aim. So, again, if I know, like if I was starting my business my last couple of years living in Australia and I knew that I was going to be moving back to Canada, I wouldn't be using a name that people would only associate with Australia or with Canberra, knowing I was going to be making a move, right? Because I would have to rename my business, rebrand, develop a whole new clientele along the way. So you just want to know, like, is this name got room to grow? If right now you're thinking, I want to teach prenatal yoga, but down the track, I also want to teach family yoga. I want to teach yoga for kids. I want to teach yoga for teens, right? Then a name that's exclusively oriented around babies might not serve you down the track, right? So you really want to be kind of thinking ahead in, have a little bit of a future vision, even though we never know where our businesses are going to take us. Have a little bit of a future vision and make sure you're not getting stuck with a business name that can't grow along with you. I didn't put enough thought into my very first business. I fell in love with a name and I named it, and it ended up being a name that I couldn't trademark. And when I went to incorporate, I had to name myself something else, which when I moved to Australia, I absolutely could not use. So then I had to rename my business again. No one died. Just renamed my business. My business was evolving anyway. Like it was fine. I was still at the center of my business. Um, and so it wasn't a huge amount of fuss when I had to rebrand. But like my first two experiences in naming a business were going in it with like the wide-eyed innocence of a 22-year-old. I was completely unprepared. So I would recommend not going into it with that and going into it with some kind of sense of like, what are people going to remember about my business? And a lot of it, yes, is going to be you, but like it can also be things like a point of reference, the street name your business is on. Paint your front door blue, Blue Door Yoga, right? Are you near a local landmark? You know, High Park Yoga, whatever. Like it doesn't have to be super complicated. And in fact, those kinds of names situate you and help people find you, right? So that's something to think about as well. And those kind of names don't have you locked into a particular style or niche or focus, right? So that's something to think about. Um, and you can use, something that's unique to you, not just your name, but like your background, the languages you speak, your heritage, your curly hair, your favorite color, your favorite animal, right? As a Canadian, I could use True North Yoga, right? Or Moose, not that. Beaver Tail Yoga, Maple Syrup Yoga, Oot and a Boot Yoga. Anyway, those are all terrible names. Feel free to use them. But like, Yoga with Alice could become, Alice in Yoga Land, Mad Hatter Yoga, White Rabbit Yoga, Through the Looking Glass Yoga. Like you can take it one step further. So in Chris's situation, when she's thinking about not being able to use grief yoga, like, get this thesaurus out, yoga for loss, like there's other ways to go. Take that name and go one step deeper, one step further. And often that can give you even a little bit more flexibility with your name. It still references the thing, but it's just that little one step removed, which makes it a little bit um, more malleable, I'll say. Yeah. If you're going to be teaching one class a week in your local community and you feel that your having a business social media page is enough to let people know what's going on in your local area and keep your existing or like those come and go kind of students informed, great. The trouble with social media is you don't own that platform and it can be taken away from you at any moment. And you can't get those people back. Because you don't own the platform, your 500 followers or whatever, if someone hacks your page, you lose your page for some reason, you've lost those 500 people. There's no way for you to get them back. Whereas if you have a website and you have people signed up to your monthly blog, or you're maintaining a database of your students through your website, you own that and it can't be taken away from you on a whim. So for me, I really believe in having a website. You don't have to have something super fancy. And there's lots of systems out there that are really easy to use, that can automate things for you, that can help you build a database, that can help you stay in touch with your students. And it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. And it's, for me, that kind of ownership is really important. Yeah. There's a studio in Canberra right now who got their page hacked, had thousands of followers, has lost their page. It's gone. It's just gone. Has to start from scratch. So, that's something to think about when we're looking at using systems we don't own ourselves. The other thing is, if I post something on social media, I don't have tons of followers. I'm really not great at social media. But if I put something on Facebook, I've got like 3,000 followers on there. Facebook might show it to 10 people. It might show it to 100 people. It's not showing it to 3,000 people. And I have no control of that. If I send out my newsletter, it's going to all 2,000 people. Now, those 2,000 people might go like, delete, delete, delete. My inbox is too full today. But that's their choice, not the choice of the middleman, which is the platform, to not show it to people. So say you've got your social, so this is such a massive tangent, but let me just finish this up. Say you're running your twice a week classes, and it's time, and you're running them over terms, and it's time for the new term to be getting started. You're looking for the new signups. You put a note on your social media. It's time for, our next block. It begins November, blah, blah, blah. It ends December, blah, blah, blah. Here's the cost. Here's how to email me. Here's all the details, right? 3 weeks down the track, your classes have already started. You get a call from one of your regular students. Like, I didn't know they were starting again. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't see anything about it. Because you couldn't reach them through that Facebook post. Yeah. So you want to be able to reach people directly without a middleman. The world is different. I used to be able to advertise through Facebook for free just by posting things or by boosting posts. That's no longer effective. We're kind of in a time of change. And it depends how you're going to market. This is a whole other conversation. How you're going to market your business is going to depend on a lot of the same factors we've talked about with naming your business. Is it a local business? Or is it international? Is it online? Is it for corporate students? Is it for older adults? Is it for prenatal students? Right? All of those considerations go into, and building from the ground up, naming your business, the colors you use, the logo, the platforms you're on. Like if I'm teaching to older adults, I might not make a TikTok and Snapchat channel. I might make Facebook and Instagram accounts, right? Whereas if I'm teaching to young people, I might not make a Facebook account because first of all, they're not going to see it. And if they see that I've got one, they're going to be like, old. So, I named my business Yoga Trinity because at the time I was very obsessed with the Trimurti in yoga, the three energies or deities of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva: creation, sustenance, and destruction. And I also had a sense that, like, in the Trinity, in the three, it was like, mind, body, spirit. And what I was teaching at the time, yoga, Pilates, massage, and that really worked for me. Because I'm an atheist, I didn't know that Trinity is like a thing also in Christian religion, which is very funny. So every once in a while, someone thinks I'm like an Anglican yoga teacher, but yeah, it wasn't about that. I just didn't know that. I'm not very good at naming businesses, I guess. Should I be giving this talk? Anyway, it's a name that served me well because I was teaching. No, when I named my business, I was teaching fitness, yoga, Pilates. Then I kind of transitioned and I was focusing much more on yoga, Pilates, massage. So it has been able to grow with me, and has been able to evolve as my business has evolved. Right. So I'm happy with my business name. I've had it for I think this business name I've had since 2004. Oh, so that's 20 years. Yeah, it's going pretty well so far. Yeah. So, like, as I said, naming your business, like, I hope this has inspired you, because it is such a creative process. Um, and again, it is such a personal expression. We just want to remember that we want it to be personal to our students too, as much as possible. We want them to make a connection with our business name, and we want them to make a connection with what kind of experience they're going to have with us in our classes and in our community, right? So those are things to think about. Um, do keep an eye on the legalities, the marketability, and how your potential students will respond to that name, right? And all those areas that we talked about that you can explore along the way. And I hope that this has been useful to you so that you can think strategically and creatively about naming your business. And like, this is important to be sure that the name you choose reflects your authentic identity and resonates with your future students. I've tried to stop two things for my entirety of my career: tangents and talking loud. It's not going well. So I might just embrace that about myself. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for being here and accepting me as I am. Oh, to those listening to the recording. See you all soon. Thank you.